All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to try and hack the source code of the universe to uncover a pretty profound secret about the nature of reality itself.
So let's start with the picture of reality that we all just instinctively get, the one that feels like pure common sense. It's this idea that there's a big, objective world out there, kind of like a giant cosmic stage. And on this stage, a single universal clock is just ticking away for everybody. Everything is simple, solid, and real, right?
Well, what if I told you that for over a century now, physics has been practically screaming at us that this intuitive picture is completely, fundamentally wrong? I don't mean just a little bit off. I mean wrong about space, wrong about time, and really wrong about the nature of just looking at things. You see, the universe is kind of like this cosmic black box. And physicists, they're like hackers, constantly probing its outputs, trying to figure out the source code. They can't just open it up and look inside, but by studying all the strange, counterintuitive results from their experiments, they've started to piece together the underlying logic. Okay, so let's dive into the first big clue. And funnily enough, it comes from an experiment that completely failed. It was supposed to prove our old, comfy picture of reality was correct. Instead, it just tore the whole thing to shreds. Back in the 1800s, physicists imagined that all of space was filled with this invisible jelly, basically. They called it the luminiferous ether. And they figured, just like when you stick your hand out of a moving car, you feel the wind, our planet moving through this ether should create an ether wind. And that wind ought to affect the speed of light. So in 1887, the famous Michelson-Morley experiment set out to measure this ether wind with incredible precision. They were expecting to find a small number, something detectable. But what they found was nothing. A big, fat, impossible zero. The speed of light was exactly the same, no matter which way the Earth was moving. The ether wind just wasn't there.
Now, a young patent clerk named Einstein took this zero result very, very seriously. He had this incredible realization. If the speed of light is the one thing that never changes for anyone, then something else has to give. And that something else is space and time. They have to stretch and shrink to make the math work. Moving clocks literally tick slower. Moving objects get shorter. And that whole idea of a single universal now for everyone in the cosmos, poof, it just evaporates.
So, our universal stage and our cosmic clock are gone. But the next hint, this one from the quantum world, is somehow even weirder. It tells us that not only is the stage relative, but the actors on it actually change their performance, depending on whether we're watching. Just look at the classic double-slit experiment. If you fire electrons through two slits when you're not looking, they act like waves. They spread out and create this complex interference pattern on the screen behind them. But, and get this, the moment you put a detector there to see which slit the electron goes through, that wave pattern totally vanishes. They suddenly behave like normal little particles, making two simple, boring bands on the screen. And this isn't some clumsy measurement error. It's not like the detector's bumping into the electron and messing things up. No, physicists have confirmed this with incredibly gentle measurements. Something much more fundamental is going on here. The answer, as bizarre as it sounds, is the simple act of looking. Before you measure it, the electron exists in this weird haze of possibilities, what's called a wave function. The moment you observe it, that wave of possibilities collapses into a single, definite reality. The observer isn't just a spectator here. You're actually a participant in creating the outcome.
Okay, so if there's no objective stage and looking at things literally changes them, what on earth holds everything together? What stops the entire universe from just dissolving into this chaotic mess of a trillion different perspectives? Well, the answer seems to be consistency.
It all comes down to a simple idea you could call the overlap test. So, imagine Mira sees a food truck, but her friend Sam's view is blocked. At first, their realities don't match up, but when they get together, investigate, and find evidence, like tire tracks or a dropped food wrapper, their stories suddenly align. Reality, then, isn't what exists out there in some absolute sense. It's the story that remains consistent when different observers compare notes. And this brings us to the final, really mind-bending reveal, where all of these clues just click into place. It turns out, reality isn't some performance that we're all just watching, it's more like a conversation that we're all having.
And here's the really wild part. We've never actually confirmed that an objective world, one that exists totally independent of us, is even real. I mean, think about it for a second. Every single piece of evidence you have for an objective world is itself a subjective experience, something you saw or heard or measured. All we've ever really confirmed is that our subjective experiences can agree with each other's.
This is actually a brilliant way to understand why the laws of physics are what they are. Things like the conservation of energy. They aren't just random rules God dreamed up. They exist because they have to. They are the strict logical requirements for a universe where different observers can compare notes and tell a consistent story. If energy could just pop into existence out of nowhere, observers at different times would see different things, and the whole idea of a shared reality would just fragment.
So this leads us to a pretty radical conclusion. The universe isn't just like a computer program. On a fundamental level, it is a computation. But there's no programmer, and there's no external hardware. It's a completely self-contained system that runs for one simple reason, because it's internally consistent. The laws, the particles, even us, we're all just patterns emerging from this incredible, self-consistent computational process.
This completely reframes everything we thought we knew. That familiar 3D world we see around us isn't the bedrock of reality. It's more like the user interface. The true source code is based on something much deeper: information and consistency. Which leaves us with one final provocative thought to chew on. A question that really cuts to the core of this whole idea. If reality really is a self-contained program, what happens when you get to the edge of the code?